Joining us to provide some analysis on China-UK relations is Josef Gregory Mahoney. He's a politics and international relations professor at East China Normal University in Shanghai. Good to have you on the show again. Now, there's a defining photo of the then Prime Minister David Cameron and President Xi Jinping sharing a pint and a basket of fish and chips at a pub in 2015. It really represented the so-called golden era between the two countries when there were much closer economic ties. 3 years later, Theresa May visited, but since then, no other UK PM has been to Beijing until now. Can you talk a little bit about the economic parity between Beijing and London and how it's changed?
Well, it's been an action-packed decade, of course, and a lot of people have a blurrier than usual sense of time given the outsized disruptions caused by the pandemic. Now, I would suggest the U.S. firstly, and perhaps the UK secondarily, were caught in a fever dream, not just fevers associated with COVID, but in desperate and even fantastical attempts to ignore their own systemic declines while trying to blame others for them. Now, in the UK, unfortunately, this fever pitch led catastrophically to Brexit, which most Brits realize now was a huge mistake. But in the same period, we continue to see British leaders dancing with the devil in Washington, while more and more reports illustrated that this was not only self-defeating, it was also deeply immoral and contrary to the values European leaders, including other British leaders, valued. And that they had been applying sort of double standards against other countries, including China, Russia, and others. So over the past decade, the UK continued to decline, while China continued to move in positive directions, not only in terms of its domestic development and governance, but likewise in its positions overseas and how it's contributing to global economic well-being, especially in the global south, as well as green innovations and transformations. Now, this is the basic reality that confronts the UK now, brought into sharper focus by Trump's shenanigans, and thus the realization that a better balance in ties with China must be established. However, as your lead-in was noting, this positive turn in UK-China relations really started in 2024, and the visit we're seeing now is perhaps an accelerated maturation of those initial developments.
So are you suggesting that China sees this visit by the likes of Starmer and his other European and Canadian counterparts as part of a bigger geopolitical shake-up? Does that sort of perhaps get in the way of really how close Beijing can become with the UK?
Well, I think China is certainly sympathetic to the views expressed by Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney at Davos that the world is at a point of rupture, and the Western world in particular needing to rethink its relationship with Washington, above all because Washington is not only an aggressor against others, but punishing those who have good relations with any country the U.S. considers a strategic competitor, above all China. Now, we've seen many Western leaders coming to China in the past 2 months, including Carney, Macron, and now Starmer. The Prime Minister of Finland was here this week as well. Macron has called the Greenland situation a wake-up call for Europe, and we've certainly heard Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi calling on France and other countries ostensibly to work jointly with China to bring more stability to the world. Consequently, I think there's a rising awareness of both the need and possibility of an inflection point, one that tips decisively in the direction of multilateralism and the international rule of law, above all contrary to what we're seeing now from Washington. That said, it's also the case that Beijing, I think, has very realistic expectations. First, it doesn't want to impose a choice on others, that you must choose China or the U.S. And second, it understands that countries are politically, economically, and militarily vulnerable to the U.S., including the U.K. So I think the hope is that we can see modest improvements in economic and diplomatic ties and increases in cultural exchanges. And if these can be accomplished, that's already quite a bit.
All right, Josef Gregory Mahoney, we'll leave it there. Really appreciate your time.